Okay, so hi campers and welcome to day two of the Series Camp conference. Before we proceed with today's session again, may I ask everyone, how are you feeling today? If you were to rate your week from 1 to 10, please type them in the chat box. And if you were to pick between Barbie or Oppenheimer, which one? Please chat them in the chat box. Wait. I'll go first. Okay. So if I were to rate my week, it'd be probably 3 because everything's been about work, and then maybe Oppenheimer. How about you, Ate Cheska?
Oh my gosh, this has been a crazy week, and I really relate to Ateneo Senior High or grind and work. But I may be biased. I choose Barbie.
Okay, interesting. How about the rest? Okay, someone said 4, and then Oppenheimer, and then Barbie. Barbie. That's interesting. Have you guys seen it? And if yes, how was it? Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer's good as well. Okay. Maybe next week. Yeah. Okay. Nice. Maybe next week as well, Jill. Okay, so while you guys were typing there in the chat box, I will start with the session. So hi everyone, I'm Rheign, the speaker manager for this year's camp conference, and I will be your host for this session. So welcome to Pathfinder Trekking to College, a conference designed to inspire and guide Filipino students who are aspiring to study abroad. Throughout our virtual sessions, we will cover various study destinations, application requirements, and hear from speakers from all across the globe, ensuring a comprehensive exploration of study abroad opportunities. So, come join us as we delve into engaging discussions, informative talks, and unlock a world of endless possibilities at Camp Study Abroad Conference brought to you by LIMS Review Center, the Princeton Review Philippines, AUG Philippines, and AUCC Philippines. So thank you so much for coming to this session. Ready na ba kayo, guys? Okay, so for this session, your live workshop called Campground Essentials Timelines will give a detailed rundown of the step-by-step process of applying to universities abroad, including important dates and deadlines based on the speaker's experiences. Before we proceed with the talk, let's lay down the house rules. First, please do not spam the Q&A box or send any inappropriate messages. Second, everyone at camp is working very hard to make your conference experience amazing. Please be respectful at all times. And third, all questions must be sent in the Q&A box. Questions in the chat box might get lost in all the messages. Now that we're all familiar with the house rules, please allow me to introduce our esteemed speaker for this session. So Cheska Rugayan, my second predecessor in CSO, graduated from the Ateneo de Manila Senior High School in 2020. She is a rising sophomore at the University of San Francisco in California and is currently working towards a bachelor's degree in business administration with a double major in international business and marketing under the School of Management Honors Program. Upon acceptance, she received the University Scholarship Merit Award and was accepted into the university's Honors College. As a former and current BS Org and involvement student, she hopes to share experiences, trials, and errors, and hopefully some helpful advice based on her own college application journey that she navigated on her own during the pandemic. Let's give Cheska a warm round of applause. Hi, Ate Cheska.
Oh my gosh, grabe naman yung esteemed. Hello. So, yes, oh my gosh. I'm so old pala. Rain is like my grand junior in Ateneo. Share ko lang. So, I will be screen sharing. Yes. Does it look okay? Okay. All right. So, I'll be talking about creating your own college application timeline. And just for disclaimer, when Rain reached out to me to give this talk, I was very scared and nervous because I am what you shouldn't do. I crammed a lot of my college applications plus sets, and it was a completely different time that no one really knew about because it was the pandemic. So it was really my own journey. And despite being nervous of feeling kind of like unqualified because I crammed, I figured that it would be a learning experience, not only a learning experience for me, but a learning experience for all of you here, to know about what I went through during my college app journey. So just getting to know me again, I'm Cheska Rugayan. You can call me Cheska or Chess. I'm an international business and marketing sophomore at USF. In 2022, I graduated from Ateneo Senior High School, one big fight, under the GA strand. And for junior high, and before that, I was in AC in Makati. And in total, I applied to 12 universities, both locally and in total, both locally and abroad. And it was all over the pandemic setting. So, but first things first, it's time to be real. Wow. Very getting with the youth. The youth. So what does it mean to be real when applying to colleges? So I know applying to colleges both locally and abroad, assuming that you're doing both or just one or the other, it can be a really overwhelming and very unfamiliar experience, especially for us international students coming from here in the Philippines. So what nga does it mean to be real? So being real for college applications is to be ready, to be eager, to be alert, and to be logical. So I'll be discussing all of these points in the next few slides. So be ready. So as soon as you can, especially when you're approaching senior high school, compile and request for all of your documents before application season starts. So if you're grade 10 incoming grade 11, and especially if you're planning to transfer or have a different school over senior high, it's really important to already request for all of your documents in your previous school, because during application season, it will be like there's really a huge influx of students requesting. So have that compiled and all in one place. May it be like physically in an envelope or in a Google Drive, even before college application starts. So for college, you'll need, of course, high school transcripts. Most schools ask for grade 9 to 12, but to be sure, have grade 7 to 12 or grade 7 to 11, sorry, ready before app season starts, or just have them on hand so you're ready to go. Next is involvement certificates, because there are some institutions both locally and abroad that do require some sort of proof or certification that you were involved or affiliated with their organization, may it be student council or outside nonprofit orgs or whatever you were involved in. And last, I think this is a lesser touched upon document, but it's really important, especially if you're applying abroad. Even locally, they ask for this, especially if you're applying for scholarships or looking for financial aid. As soon as you can, inform your parents that you will need their help in getting bank statements and income tax return documents from them, because if you're applying for especially institutionalized financial aid or scholarships from schools, they will need some proof of your finances, and just to have like a more holistic view of your financial situation. And last but not least, list down your extracurricular involvements as soon as possible, whether you're in grade 9 or younger, or already in grade 11, before your guidance counselor in your school or anyone tells you. Just list it down is in the notes app or even on a Google document. Or as soon as now, you can be ahead of everyone, even in college, and start your LinkedIn. It's not only helpful during college app season when you're trying to remember what you were involved in or what you've done, but it's also helpful beyond app season. Or if LinkedIn is a bit intimidating pa, or it's not on your radar right now, just build your own CV or resume. And I'm sure there's a lot of resources and templates online that will help you build your CV and your resume to make sure that you stand out and your capabilities are really translated on a piece of paper. So That's for being ready. Be eager. This is more of a lot of emotional and mental preparedness for college application season, because it's known that it's a difficult time, but no one really prepares your no one really tells you how to balance everything out. And to kind of first point, be your own cheerleader. I know this sounds very cliche or very like, oh, like cliche nga, but it's really a time where you have to prepare for upcoming challenges and uncertainties. And for me, it was really the pandemic. I was really set on these goals and expectations for myself, and then all of a sudden, um, it was gone. Or I had to kind of recalibrate. And this isn't meant to scare you, but it's again being real, literally being more realistic, and just knowing that it's a time where you sacrifice a lot of time with friends and family, a lot of energy, a lot of hours of sleep, and a lot of cups of coffee. But it will really have great outcomes, especially if you really put your mind to it and it's really your goal. So strengthen your relationship with yourself. College application season is really a time where, for me especially personally, it took a toll on my self-confidence and my self-esteem. I think I saw a lot of people, especially online, or like a lot of people who are also sharing their college application journeys, sharing what they have already accomplished and what they've already done as like a 16 or 17-year-old. And I really belittled a lot of accomplishments that I did and things that I've been involved in. But I think before it even starts, it's important to have that mindset and remind yourself that this is your journey, and whatever experiences or whatever learnings you had in your life is what makes you you. And that's what they look for in your essays or whatever interview you say. Like, they already have a list of all of your accomplishments, and they're going to be screening a ton of accomplished students, but what sets you apart and what makes you you? So that has to translate in 250 to 500 words. And lastly, aim for schools that will be the best fit for you. I'll be delving upon this more later, but really research on schools that not only look good on paper or not only sound good, but they have to fit you, the program, the location, the environment, the culture. And yes, so be eager. Next is to be alert. So once you've already looked at your schools and narrowed them down, be alert. Keep track of deadlines. Take note of ED, like early decision, regular decision, financial aid deadlines. And if you're approaching your senior year, it should be already out by August, or when I looked at it, it was September, but it had already opened. So I highly suggest August of your application cycle. I wasn't aware of this and no one really prepared me for this. So by the time I saw the deadlines, it was already a week before early decision. So I applied via the regular decision cycle, and use what works for you. There's a lot of people who have very elaborate Excel sheets to see their progress, Google Calendars or Notion, whatever works for you. As long as you really see and visualize the deadlines and what you have to do, then you're all set. And working ahead will cause you less stress in the long run. Trust me. Cramming talaga yung biggest enemy here. Really easier said than done, because there's a lot of factors. There's a lot more factors into applying for colleges, especially as an international student. But even just taking the little steps as soon as you can, rather than doing it all in one day or in one week, will really relieve your stress in the long run. And set healthy boundaries and expectations, since if you keep track of your deadlines and you know what to do, you're able to better map out what you need to do on a certain day, or set goals for yourself, because it's really unrealistic that you'll be able to finish a supplementary essay in like 3 supplementary essays in one day, or be able to get all of your requirements in a span of 3 days. So you really have to map out and visualize what you need to do and how to do it in a way that is still kind to yourself. Lastly, is to be logical. I cannot stress this enough, but research, research, research. College, and especially deciding to go abroad for college, is a really life-changing decision, and it involves a lot of knowledge in what you're putting yourself into, and not and for this application, what you're putting your effort into. So it's important to realize, I think, that colleges are not a one size fits all. It doesn't mean it works for one person that it would necessarily fit for you, and it doesn't mean it might work for you, it might work for the next person. So it's really important to do your research, weigh out the pros and cons. This was something that I did, especially after I got my decisions for college, weighing out the pros and cons, not only of the school, but also the pros and cons of like going abroad and deciding to, move away from home. Diversify your options. So really have your safeties, your reach schools, and your target schools in check. So really keep it diverse, and don't put all of your eggs in one basket, because you'll never know. You might surprise yourself in the end. And lastly, think about not only what the institution can offer to you as a student if you are to be admitted, but what can you offer. And that's something that I think people miss out a lot on when applying to colleges and saying what they need to say for their essays or for their interviews, is that what can you offer to the school that would set you apart from all the other applicants. So that being said, I will be sharing my own college application journey, and spoiler alert, it was not real at all. But I'll just be briefly sharing it just to give you a glimpse of my own timeline. And then later on, I will be sharing my recommendations of my more ideal timeline, going through what I went through. And keep in mind, this was all over the pandemic. So I had like the setting and like the environment was much more different. So this really varies per person. So in junior high school, particularly grades 9 and 10, this is when I started taking my extracurriculars and involvements more seriously. I actually started like investing time and energy into involvements rather than just joining for friends or things like that. So I was in varsity for grade 9. I was an active class officer, and if you can, or if you have the opportunity to, I really suggest looking at study abroad opportunities if your school does offer it. At least for me in AC, they offered one in Stanford, and I applied, and thankfully I got in. And it was like unexpectedly really a stepping stone for me into rationalizing and really realizing that a dream of like going to college abroad is within reach. I think especially for me personally as an international student, compared to other people, I really thought that like studying in the States was really not an attainable goal for me at first, because I didn't take AP classes. I didn't know what the SAT was like compared to other students. But yeah, that really was an eye opener for me. So after that, I started making a list of schools that I wanted to pursue, both locally and internationally. Also, I'm speaking from experience as a person who's also applied sets while also um applying for schools internationally along with that. So fast forward to grade 11, that was when the pandemic really hit, and there was a lack of productivity, and it really took a toll on my mental health, because yun nga, it had a major curveball on my plans. This was the time that I also moved to a different school after being in my previous school for 14 years. So it was all online, and I really didn't know how to navigate or what to do with myself because I couldn't do like the traditional like volunteer work, or I couldn't really involve myself the way I thought I would because the pandemic hit. So that led me also to have a lot of realizations and really pushing myself to be active in student council and even beyond the classroom in quotes, because it was literally my bedroom for 2 years. I think that being in student council, or even not student council, just involving yourself in probably an org or a sport that you're really passionate passionate about and you feel will contribute to your growth as a person. It's really helpful, especially in writing essays or just making you a more well-rounded applicant. And this is also when I started making my Common App account. I didn't really start anything. I just made my Common App account plus the UC app application portal. Because if you are applying to UCs like UCLA, UC Berkeley, all the UC schools, it is not on Common App. So there are also a lot of other schools that aren't on Common App. So it's helpful to make your account first and see which schools have different application portals. So you're able to iron it out and know where to submit which things. And in grade 11, I registered and started reviewing for my SAT. But I actually didn't take the SAT because, again, it was over the pandemic and it was canceled. So I wasn't able to take my SAT. And then this is when the summer before senior year and during the duration of senior year, this was when I started finalizing my list of schools because I had about 20 schools on my list, which one wasn't realistic for me and two was just really expensive to do. So I started finalizing my list of schools and I narrowed it down to 7 or 8 abroad. And then I did my SAT prep, which again was for the October of that year, but it got canceled. And I also took my TOEFL. I did TOEFL. I prepared and took it at home because of the pandemic. Not sure if they still offer the at home TOEFL taking, but yes. And then I also started conceptualizing and finalizing what I actually wanted to write for my essays. That being said, what I wish I did better and how to improve your journey. If there's anything that you can take away from this talk, it it doesn't mean you think you can cram it, you should. And that is definitely easier said than done as a high school student. And there's a lot of things that come up, but as much as possible, avoid cramming. Trust me. But I know it can get overwhelming, and that overwhelmingness kind of tends you to push back a lot of things that you have to do or pushing it back for later. But it really helps to really compartmentalize and break down those bigger tasks into smaller tasks. So whatever point you're in, whether you're a grade 9 student or younger watching this, or already approaching your senior year and kind of scrambling to think about college apps, just the basics to get started is one, explore beyond the classroom. Like I said, I really put emphasis on being involved beyond academics because it helps you not only to discover more about yourself, but also your passions and what you actually want to pursue for college and after. Next is to create your Common App account or respective application portal. So once you're done, once you're already set, make your Common App. Before anything else, before even getting your requirements, make your Common App already, because Common App actually tells you what requirements each school needs, and some schools require more recommenders than others, or some don't require recommenders at all. Some have optional essays and some have required supplementals. So really helpful to get that started. And then once you create your Common App account and see what each university requires, narrow down the list of universities you're applying to. So it can get overwhelming and it is unrealistic to apply to like a lot of schools. But if you can do it, then you can. But it really depends on what you think your boundaries are. And next is to compile and request the necessary documents. Again, once you see the Common App and once you see what each school requires, request for it, ask your registrar, ask your guidance counselor for any help on how to get these documents. And lastly, prepare your resume. From being ready, prepare your resume and the list of involvements for your recommenders reference when you are applying and getting recommenders. So speaking of getting recommenders, do this as soon as possible because connections and building that relationship with whoever you're asking your recommendation letters cannot be rushed. It doesn't mean that you're just gonna, like talk to that certain teacher or to that certain advisor because you're gonna ask for their recommendation. But it means that you just want to let them know that you will be asking for their recommendation and like seeking advice, especially for college. And it's really helpful to do it in advance because during college application season, they will get a ton of emails and a ton of requests from their students. So it's really important to be one step ahead. And if you can't think of someone that really you could connect with, think of a teacher or a member of faculty that really saw your potential or saw your growth. May it be someone from your org, a moderator in your org, or a teacher from any subject that really got to see your potential as a student and can translate that on a recommendation. And conceptualizing your topics Rheign for your essays early on means that you could also get constructive feedback from your recommenders. So again, building that rapport and that connection really helps. Next is tips for taking standardized testing. So again, I wasn't able to take my SAT, but I was able to take my TOEFL. But as someone who started like preparing and reviewing for my first take of the SAT in grade 11, I feel like I really should have done it earlier, as soon as grade 10. Not intense review, but at least starting to get myself familiarized with the topics or at least the content. I know a lot of people who are able to do their SAT review for free just through like Khan Academy. Just familiarize yourself with the topics and the content because it is a different format of testing. And keep in mind that some or most universities are test optional. So all of the schools that I applied to over the pandemic, especially, it's test optional. And I think a lot of schools are opting test optional post-pandemic too. So really do your research on like your school's testing policies and evaluate your stats. If there is a need for you or you feel the need to have like an SAT score, a good SAT score to really boost your application, then go for it. But opting for more test optional options and not taking the SAT is also a route because it's helpful, a route that's possible because it's helpful for those like me who are also reviewing and taking the sets. I wasn't able to take the sets, but I wasn't sure if I would have to take, the UPCAT, the ASET, USTET, and the set. So it was helpful because when I was studying for it all at once, it really got very overwhelming on top of ACADS and the things that I had to do still as a student. So this is for the summer before grade 11 or earlier, or even earlier. If you're grade 10, grade 9, and you think you've had like a very, not necessarily life-changing, but very reflective topic that you've been pondering on that you think really reveals who you are as a person, that's very unique and individual to you, then just jot it down. Make a Google document of just word vomit and just possible ideas. But the summer before grade 11 or earlier is really when I think you should start taking it more seriously and really drafting it. Essay topics are usually, there are some that are specific to the school, and it's usually more of like, what life event has shaped you, or like, why do you choose this institution, or why should this institution select you? Those kinds of questions. So let your ideas grow and evolve with you over time, rather than pressuring yourself to think about your entire life story or what everything you've gone through on the spot. That's something that led me to cram my essays, is that I thought I wanted to experience more of my involvements in grade 11 and 12 more before writing my essays. But in reality, I feel like I should have written things down based on prior experiences and just letting my ideas evolve. And lastly, I think the seemingly simple but hardest question to answer during college app, especially preparing for it, is who are you? Beyond your titles, beyond your involvements, beyond what you've done, who are you? Because they already have your resume, they already have all your accomplishments listed down, but what they really look for, especially based on my experience with interviews, is what were you able to learn and take away that was beneficial to you. So once you've been like doing your essays and research your schools, it's really important to look for application fee waivers. So once your application cycle begins, again, mga around August, research if the schools you're applying to provides application fee waivers, because it's really a huge load off of like financially to have an application fee waiver, even just for one or two schools, especially if you're converting it to peso. So what I did, USF actually has USF and a couple of schools that I also applied to also offer application fee waivers for international students. What helped me is that I contacted admissions via email regarding my circumstances financially, and especially since it was the pandemic. So again, it would also be helpful to research and reach out earlier to give these schools more ample time to actually respond to you. It wouldn't be realistic for you to like go through the application and ask for an application fee waiver the day before the deadline. So give it at least a week or two for them to respond if they are able to waive your app fees. So since we talked about app fees, how much does applying for colleges abroad cost based on my experience? So for the SAT, without I didn't have any SAT waiver. Before it got refunded, it was $108 at that time. For my TOEFL, for the home edition, because I had to download my own software, and they had to like I had to download my own software to take it from home. It was $225. So again, do your research in the schools that you are applying to, because some if not most, accept a certification from your high school saying that English was your primary medium of instruction, and that could supplement for TOEFL or IELTS. But I just took it just in case, and I was applying for schools that did require a TOEFL or some sort of English proficiency exam. And then lastly, application fees. Thankfully, there were a couple schools that waived it, but it ranges from literally free and waived to $90 per school. The most expensive school that I applied for was $90. So it ranges from 70s, 80s, 90s. Yeah. So once you've submitted, once you've paid the application fee, you will expect to hear interviews, and these interviews are usually conducted by alumni from that institution. And interviews aren't really a guaranteed or like a likelihood that you are going to be accepted, but it's always good to put your best foot forward, since you never know what effect it can have on your application. So again, what helped me prepare for my interviews is to really get involved beyond the classroom, not just to give like what accomplishments I've done or what I've achieved, but I think it really improved my communication skills and confidence. Really working hand in hand with like school admin or school faculty, or even office even lawyers or like professionals in their field, and contacting them for different orgs and different events really helped me boost my confidence as well, and communicating with them. And I think a huge misconception that there is with interviews is that when they say interview, it's mostly like them asking you questions, but it's really what they're expecting is really more of a conversation and you bouncing off of each other's like thoughts and inputs. So that's why it's really important to do your research as well before your interview. Prepare specific questions that show you how dedicated you are and how much you want to be in the institution, more than just like the first result on Google. Really really know more, like even like the most niche or specific things that spark your interest about that school. Ask them, because you'll never know it'll impress them how much you know while not even being from that school yet. And lastly, maximize networking opportunities and resources. Things like this camp, with if you are interested in any school, it doesn't have to be like, USF or anything. There are a lot of people who are willing to help international students. Really prepare for these interviews and gain more knowledge and perspective on what they're putting themselves into. So really maximize that, and it doesn't only help you in college application, but it also helps you to just broaden your knowledge and perspective on the world and people's experiences, and that's always a great thing. And so yes, considering a gap year, this was actually like asked like as a guide question. So I personally, I didn't consider a gap year. It was either staying locally here in the Philippines or moving abroad. So most of this experience, most of what I'm saying here is based on research that I've done, and also based on asking people from USF who I know have taken a gap year. And so what are the benefits that I've seen? First is financial readiness. It's no secret that really studying abroad is really an investment, and it's really, there's a lot of costs that come with it, not only financially but also in the second bullet point, emotionally and mentally. So considering a gap year can help you give more time for yourself, to seek sponsors, external, or even negotiate institution scholarships and financial aid to help fund your studies abroad, because it's not just, it's not just tuition, it's also your living expenses, your flight to that your flight abroad, and all of that. So considering a gap year is really good for that aspect, and also emotional and mental preparedness, especially coming from the pandemic. A lot of people weren't able to recover, and weren't ready to really have that big shift to college ng biglaan, and that's really valid and good that they have that self-awareness before forcing themselves into something. So it gives them ample time to really adjust to a new environment, especially since if you're moving abroad, it's a really big shift. Yes. So if there's benefits, what are things that you need to consider? So first is what you're actually gonna do. I think the concept of a gap year is really stigmatized, especially, I guess, from my experience in our culture, because a lot of people think that it's just an excuse for you to like slack off or not do anything before college, when that really isn't the case. I think based on the people I've asked about their gap years, it will take as much, if not more, research and effort to really maximize your gap year and make your and improve your application for the next cycle. So I know people who work for startups, who started a startup, did a passion project, volunteered abroad or locally, and that's how they were able to do a gap year. So with that, if you are to take a gap year, who will be your support system? Not only financially, because it is also an investment to take a gap year if you are going to pursue those other things to improve your application, but who can help you navigate this route? Because it's likely that it will be a more isolating experience, especially seeing your friends go through college and have that college experience, since I think based on my first year that it's more of really a collective thing. So who can support you, again, not only financially but also emotionally and mentally, and how will you go about seeking the support? So again, a lot of research and effort if you are considering a gap year. So now that we're, sorry, I feel like I'm over time, but now that we're approaching the end, and I know there's a lot of senior high students na incoming grade 12 and will be going through the college application, and there was a lot of information in this. So I just want to reassure you that no matter at what point or age you are, it's not too late. Take it from me, who really didn't have a set timeline or didn't have anyone to turn to during this season. It's really not too late. So here are just some like pro tips and advice. One is to not be discouraged. Your journey is your own. So if you weren't able to be as quote unquote as accomplished as other people over your high school journey, it really it really isn't dictated by just your grades or just the things you've accomplished, but also who you are, because they want a student who is not only accomplished but is also willing to learn. So your journey is your own. Don't compare yourself to other students who are sharing their stories. Even like, don't compare yourself to me, or don't compare to yourself to someone on TikTok who is sharing how they got into this school or that school. Because again, we're coming from a much different environment and background. You're not alone, so don't be afraid to ask for your help. I really appreciate that there's resources like camp, or even just your circle of friends to help you go through it, to peer review your essays, or just to give you reassurance during this very challenging and overwhelming time. And when you're applying, or if you're already applying, always remember quality over quantity. You may want to have you have a lot of expectations for yourself and a lot of goals that you want to achieve. But given the time frame or the resources you have, it's important to be realistic and know your boundaries and know your capabilities. It's better to have a good and solid application to only like 3 schools rather than an application that was very half-hearted. But it was for 10 schools. So yeah. It won't be easy, but it will be worth it. And again, be open-minded with your options, because college apps it's really surprising. And especially when you get the result, it's really surprising. And you don't ever know where it takes you. And lastly, always remember to be real, to be ready, eager, alert, and logical. So with that, thank you so much for listening. And I know there's a Q&A portion if there's still time, but if there should there be any questions that arise after this that you want to say, like in private, or discuss in private, that you're not comfortable sharing to like the whole group, or if any questions come up when you're applying to college right now, or in a few years, don't hesitate to reach out to me. So there's my Instagram, Facebook and Messenger, email, and my LinkedIn if you want to connect on LinkedIn. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ate Cheska, for your amazing talk. Truly, it's super duper hard to balance work, life, and then college apps. So, yeah, be real, everyone. So before we officially wrap up this session, we'll open the floor for a Q&A session because I think we have a few minutes left. So we're going to start from the top. So from an anonymous attendee, hello, I'm an incoming senior and I only thought about going abroad this year. Is it still possible for me to cram my way abroad, or could I just transfer abroad after I finish my first term in college here in PH?
That is a really good question. And I am living proof that you can cram your way abroad. But again, it's really about managing your expectations and quality over quantity. Yung requirement, like, you can really seek help from your guidance counselor, people in school who are, trained and professionals at helping students. But really, I think if you are in a place that you really want to go abroad, and you think you don't have time, really narrow down your options and see what effort you can exert at this point. And yes, transferring is a really valid option, but for me personally, uh transferring is a more difficult route for me, because if like, it's not to scare you out of it, but it's just, personally, I didn't think about it because I wanted to really focus on college. I didn't want to have like a year or two in college and then go through that college application cycle again. But that's just a personal thing. And also, a lot of schools offer less institutionalized like scholarships, or like, especially private schools, they offer less for transfer admits. So I think that's something to keep in mind as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, for the next question from Maureen Tanyada, what are some helpful survival or essential advice do you have for seniors approaching college? And what is student life like during the first year in college abroad?
Oh my gosh, survival tips. I don't know either. I think it's just really taking each day one step at a time. senior high was a different environment for me, literally, because it was all online. But also, again, it's really important to have that solid group of friends who are also going through um that same journey as you. Because it's one thing that it's difficult, but knowing that there's other people who are sharing that struggle or sharing that experience with you really makes you enjoy the journey. Like when senior high ended and like we were all going to college, we were like, can't believe this is over. Like we were counting the days until it was over, but then it was actually over. And it's really with the people and the connections you make along the way. And that's also something that I took with me going into college, was to really broaden my connections, because I wasn't going all the way to the other side of the world to not get to know more people and um know more about them, and to stay in my bubble. So I made it a point to go out of my bubble and just still be BS org and involvements in college, because that's what brought me a lot of joy and fulfillment in high school. So that's something that homesickness and also homesickness and like that culture shock at first is really inevitable, and I think that's what scares a lot of people away. But once you have your routine down and once you're able to build those connections slowly, it's really fulfilling. So that's what I can say after my first year, and I have no regrets.
Can relate for the PS org. Anyways, next question from another anonymous attendee. Hello, how do you ask or look for sponsors?
I I, again, as someone who crammed their way into college applications, what I did was I really researched on like different foundations that offered college scholarships. I didn't know what kind of college scholarships, but if they said that they offered, I emailed them. I sent them an email regarding my financial situation. I sent them my transcripts, my decision letter. But again, it's that kind of thing where you can email 20 to 30 foundations and only hear back from two. Um, so it really takes a lot of time and effort, but I do recommend starting early, and if not, network with people, network especially with students who have found sponsorships or do have sponsorships, and ask them how they were able to seek that kind of financial support.
Okay, thank you. Now, next question from Margaret. Is it necessary to take a gap year after graduating senior high school in the Philippines before studying in the US for college?
I don't again, that gap year portion was just again to really show your options. But again, for me personally, it wasn't an option for me because I wanted to just go straight to college and graduate on time. So if you're thinking about taking a gap year, oh, is she asking if it's necessary or
Yeah.
okay? I think it really varies per person. If you're especially like finances, and if you have like your living situation abroad like figured out, and also if you're ready to like just take that step and go abroad, if that's really what you want to do, and not if you don't want to have any options here, then I think that's a really good route to take. But also, again, just to emphasize, if you are taking a gap year, what are you going to do with it, and how are you going to maximize it?
Okay, next question from another anonymous attendee. Do you have any tips when it comes to coming up with topics for the essays?
I feel like think of what I did and what I found the most compelling during my essay writing journey is that it's really the little things in your life that matter. It doesn't have to be as obscure as that girl from TikTok who got into Harvard by writing about how she hated like the letter S, and it's because like her parents it's about her parents. It doesn't really have to be that. If that's the kind of essay you're going for, then by all means. But it's really the little things in your life that you think are very minute or very insignificant, but the fact that you thought about it and how it contributed to your life is something unique and that stands out. Again, my biggest pet peeve when I was reading a lot of my friends college essays, and the biggest comment is that to refrain from making it look like a resume. Refrain, because they already know what you've achieved. They already know your grades. They already know what they already know. So what else? It's really they don't know who you are. So it's a blank slate. So what do you want them to know about you and who you are and how you got to that place? So yeah, that's super vague, but that's why you really need the time to reflect, like very deep reflection.
Okay, next question. From Peter Fabricante. When can we start to apply, or are there any apps?
I think applications are, if I'm not mistaken, I think the application cycle starts in August. I'm not completely sure. But you can start looking, if you make your Common App account, you can start looking at when the deadline is for fall. Because it really varies per school. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
It's okay. Okay. Next from Chal Labastida, fellow Assumptionista daw. When narrowing down the list of universities I wish to apply to, what is safe ratio of reach, target, and safety schools?
Say, like, that really varies per person too. What I looked at is acceptance rate. So my reach schools were the Ivy Leagues, Stanford, those kinds of schools. And I mean, if you feel like you can apply to just those and you're qualified enough, by all means go ahead. So for me, like, reach schools were like in the 5 to, let's say, 20% acceptance rate. And then the target schools were the schools that, like, it doesn't mean also that acceptance rate doesn't really, like, it does matter, but it doesn't define like the quality of education you're gonna get. It's just like your likelihood of getting in if you really want to go abroad. So target schools are like the schools that you feel most like comfortable in, and like it's not like a shot in the dark to get in. So that's like in the 30s to, let's say, 70%. And then safety schools are like above that. But you can build your own range and also do your own research and what that means for you. But that's how I personally took it.
Okay, so unfortunately, I think we don't have any more time. So that concludes our Q&A session. Thank you everyone for your active participation. I hope that our beloved speaker was able to shed light on your curiosities and concerns. So if not, you guys can contact at the Cheska through this your like social media accounts if we weren't able to answer your questions because of time constraint. So all right. On behalf of CAMP's 2023 facilitation team, I would like to extend our sincerest gratitude and appreciation to you for sharing with us your valuable insights for today. We are deeply grateful for your time, effort, and commitment in preparing and delivering such an impactful talk. Let's give a round of applause naman for Cheska. Thank you. So I hope Cheska's session got you guys excited because we'll be having our next session in 5 minutes. Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Rheign and Camp. Thank you.
Thank you.